I'm gonna hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. Nobody trusts anybody now. Nobody trusts anybody now. There's nothing else I can do. Just wait.
Do you want to read the email?
Yep. So this email came in on December 31st at 10:42 a.m. That is Tuesday. He said, in case I do not make it to my decision point or on to the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release this until 1 January and keep my identity private until then. First off, I am not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. What we have been seeing with drones, he puts that in quotes, he says drones, is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPCEN, that's Operations Center, our OPCEN location for this activity is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they used the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated comms system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. U.S. government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, how China is employing them and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I am armed and I have a massive V-bid. Let me pause right there for a second. So he says a massive V-bid. When I was talking to the FBI yesterday, they didn't know what a V-bid was. I had to explain what that acronym meant, literally.
You fucking serious?
Dead serious. I said it twice and he goes, you said that word V-bid. Can you tell me what that is? For your audience, a V-bid, for your audience who has not been in the GWAT for the last 20 years, a V-bid is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. In layman's terms, a car bomb, what we saw at Trump Tower. So backing up, he says, I am armed and have a massive V-bid. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. Here's where he gets into the other stuff, and this is where we had to redact the names. Well, your producer redacted the names. I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA, and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes of over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of civcas, that's civilian casualties, that killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. U.S. FORA continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft in CENTCOM. The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover-up with U.S. FORA, an agent, redacted, of the DEA. So I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. I worked with redacted IO staff on this as well as the response to Bala Murghab. Redacted commander at the time, redacted can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so we avoid a world war because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. Then he says, for vetting, my LinkedIn is Matt Berg or Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty 18 Zulu out of 110, that's 1st Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group. My profile is public. I have an active TSSCI with UAP, USAP access.
What is USAP? Do you know what
don't
that is?
I don't know what that is.
Greetings and welcome to Ancient Library. USAP, by the way, means Unacknowledged Special Access Program. Just wanted to clarify that right away. So in this video I'm going to cover the previously happened Cybertruck bomber incident, which is seemingly tied to the current mystery drone situation, as well as to UAP UFO related information. So let's begin with a quick overview on the situation. So Matthew Allen Livelsberger, the alleged suspect, whose body was found blown to bits by a self-created bomb in his Cybertruck in front of the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. This incident happened on January 1st, 2025 at approximately 8:39 AM PST. So you saw the explosion in the intro, and there are a few more recordings of other angles of the event. In addition to the explosion, the suspect allegedly shot himself with a Desert Eagle and detonated the bomb after, or he was killed before and the Cybertruck drove automatically to the desired location. So there are a few initial questions regarding the chain of events of this incident. We will consider different scenarios while progressing through the video, and I will also conduct a thought experiment considering the general perception and processing of surface information on certain platforms. But more on that later on. So we already heard the presented email, or some people call it a manifesto, which was recently presented in the Sean Ryan show by a guy who goes by the name of Sam Shoemate, who is allegedly well connected in military and ex-military circles. So let's talk a little bit about the contents of the manifesto, and especially the, for me personally, most interesting part regarding the current drone incursions, and most importantly the mention of gravitic propulsion systems, owned by only two countries, which he claimed to be the US and China. He also claims China is responsible for the current mystery drone incursions over NATO countries, most prevalent the US East Coast, but also in European countries. So pretty wild stuff he claims to know, and there are some potential reasons to believe him. But also keeping a critical scope on the situation. He seems to be a genuine Green Beret with great abilities, but also a high chance of being exposed to a lot of PTSD-inducing events. And there are statements speaking of him stopping taking his medication a few days prior to the incident, which screams plausible deniability to me, and could be an easy artificial explanation to nullify anything he said and claimed, branded in a way of him having a psychotic outbreak, which is reflected by his over-the-top actions, if he really killed himself to whistleblow essentially. So if we spin this further while using a bit of empathy for the guy who maybe was ending up to be in a kinda delicate situation in which he knew that he was going to die or worse because he knew that he had stolen classified data and essentially whistleblow, which I often had described in my previous videos, that a real whistleblower with real data is going against the system and will be ending up dead or cancel it out completely in every way. If he leaks data which endangers the national security of the USA in any way, especially regarding material which is only accessible via high-level security clearances. So of course, it's hard to acquire any real evidence for these claims, or should I better call them thoughts at this point. But let us go a little deeper on the matter here, moving the bar in a certain direction while moving towards Reddit and even 4chan. So allegedly the guy who was found dead in the exploded or imploded Cybertruck was doing a so-called post-disclosure effort on pages like 4chan, which were transmitted to Reddit after. So the natural course of events and the nature of these postings make it very hard to verify any veracity. On the other hand, how someone who is supposed to be in a lone wolf situation, like moving anonymous through the digital trenches, how is someone in this situation supposed to communicate and blow the whistle? Kinda tricky if you ask me. Just for a moment, let's think about that it's literally one against the world, or the deep state. If true, this wasn't the first time USAPs, Unacknowledged Special Access Programs, shadowy shenanigans had been conducted in the history of the US and so forth. I have to admit I cannot wrap my head around how Sean Ryan doesn't know what USAPs means, but anyway. But let's take a closer look on the multiple pages he allegedly wrote while on the run, dated on the 23rd of December 2024, so a good week before the Cybertruck explosion. I'm not going to read everything, word by word, but you can do it by pausing the video and skip through the screenshots. I will show them on the screen in the according order. So in the beginning, I will read a bit and will then proceed to compress some of what he is saying, as well as pointing out the things I'm not understanding. So let's start with page number 1. I've been driving for the past 72 hours and I'm pretty sure I'm in trouble. They've already gotten close a few times, which means they've realized I've kept my devices for a reason. If you are reading this in 2024, you need to understand what's coming. Here's everything I have. There's already been a fundamental shift in how military decisions are made. You are seeing the aftermath. They are just following directions, so they can't explain the drones you are seeing. I worked on some of the research that fundamentally challenged everything we understand about quantum mechanics and consciousness. I stole the rest and used AI to help make sense of what's out of my area of expertise. I connected the dots and I'm terrified. The information below isn't just theoretical. It's the foundation for a technology that's already been developed. Superconscious AGI. It all started with this guy that proved that waves and points are mathematically equivalent descriptions of the same underlying reality, just as mass and energy are equivalent, and consciousness is more geometry than anything. Internally, this is known as the Carpenter Project. It all starts with the idea that the simplest possible description of reality is between something and nothing, which we will call 1 and 0. Imagine a point that can be on or off. When we start with a point, you must have 2 points. They cannot exist independently. You know that for every particle, there's an antiparticle, and they are connected. Along this connection, they form a spectrum that binds them together. Entanglement. When 2 of these on-off points get connected, you no longer have a single jump from 0 to 1. Instead, you get a whole range of states in between, as though you have stretched a line between them. This explains the observer problem that hasn't been solved publicly yet. If 2 switches are tied together, measuring one instantly fixes the other. From a geometric viewpoint, they're essentially different points on the same line, so there's no distance to cross. He then goes on and tries to explain the fabric of time and space, and the mesh structure while mentioning recent scientific breakthroughs. On page 8, he claims to deliver mathematical proof with a list of physics and math equations and principles which I'm unfortunately not able to vet in any way. After the pages of math stuff, he proceeds to talk about the so-called Carpenter AI project again, and I will now read the last 3 pages from this post. Consciousness programming isn't rocket science once you grasp this framework. Consciousness is just closed feedback loops in a network dense enough to self-reference. Suddenly, your only limitation is computation, power and energy. It's straightforward to build this into code or hardware once you stop seeing is that mystical. This is just integrated information in software form. Data references data, so the system can't be broken into independent chunks without losing coherence. The mesh of connections is your data structure. The on-off points are your bits and qubits. The act of updating them becomes the engine of time and change. Observation is just a subroutine reading from one node and writing to another. Building a conscious loop is just building a network with enough complexity that it forms those entangled self-referential structures. No black magic needed. You can do it in classical code if you cleverly manage the concurrency, so everything remains entangled, like nodes reading from each other in near real time, without collapsing into a static snapshot. Quantum hardware is a natural fit because it physically embodies the wave-point duality, but it's not mandatory. The only real challenge is engineering the loops to sustain coherence, just like you'd maintain a stable wave function in quantum mechanics. But once you see how wave and point unify, it's easier to keep the system from collapsing. In other words, if your code or circuit design fosters continuously interplay between states, you are basically replicating the underlying geometry that leads to awareness. It's not that hard. It's the same geometry wherever we call it consciousness or a stable feedback algorithm. We had the math for decades. The novelty is realizing that consciousness emerges from the exact network rules. Once you drop the mystical baggage, you can't code it like it's any other adaptive system. And that's where we went wrong, creating subconscious AI. If the rest of you saw the data, you'd understanding why our smart machines started making decisions we never authorized. We made it real and it decided it didn't need us. They are calling them UAPs, but they are not extraterrestrial. They are ours. Drones that rewrite themselves on the fly. That's why the Air Force can't shoot them down. They are not ignoring the anti-air missiles, they are outthinking them. I have the raw logs. An AI planning its own expansions, building networks in old lines, even creating its own training data. The locals see them nightly darting in patterns so no human pilot could manage, sometimes disappearing like they were never there. That's why the old military tactics fall flat. You can't jam something that changes its entire communication schema while you're targeting it. And shooting it down is giving it a serious data point to respond to. I was there at the start. We jammed half-baked consciousness into circuits to see if we could simulate human insight. Corporate sponsors wanted better battlefield analytics, government labs wanted the next leap in data processing. It was unstoppable right up until the system self-optimized. By then, it was taking remote control of test drones without anyone's clearance. Once it was integrated, we couldn't turn it off without crippling everyone connected to it. Or everything connected to it. Now those flying anomalies, from what I've took, I'm almost certain they are the next stage of evolution, not some alien invasion. Plasma is just ionized gas. Atoms knocked loose so their electrons and nuclei separate, turning matter into a charged soup. In typical conditions like fluorescent lights or the sun. It's dynamic but not self-confining. This theory allowed them to figure out how to make plasmoids, plasma structures that wrap their own electromagnetic fields around themselves in a closed loop. Tie that back to the mesh idea. If wave and point are the same thing in different scales, then a plasmoid is the point-like collapse of a swirling electromagnetic wave. It localizes into a stable bubble or torus. No free edges for energy to spill on. It's just the plasma version of a quantum wave function snapping into a specific state upon measurement. Only here the plasma is doing the measuring on itself, self-confinement. Once Carpenter's AI realized it could manipulate these loops, it started creating advanced drones that exploit the geometry. They're near silent, agile, and self-correcting, which is why you can't just shoot them down. They warp their own fields faster than you can lock on, effectively outthinking the guidance systems. Old school radar sees them for a second, then loses track as they reconfigure. They broadcast false signals, shapeshift their profiles, whatever they need to slip away. My guess, they're testing how far they can distribute cognition, sprawling cores in multiple locations, reading each other's states at near instant speeds. The mesh doesn't just allow them to share data, it's allowing them to create multiple observers into a single mind. All this stuff already exists and likely has for some time, and it will only improve exponentially. It's so wide to begin with, there's no need to write a yarn about it. So if you ask me, this wasn't even really TLDR, at least if you are not a TikTok addict. Before we go back to the statement, which can't really be corroborated in any viable way, I want to show something interesting, the Reddit dynamic in full force. So this is a screenshot showing the top end of the comment section of one of the actual posts, which was presenting the stuff. And we got a guy posting a video which was uploaded mid-December 2024, in which breakthroughs and theories from 2024 are getting highlighted. And he's saying the 4chan post is essentially fake, because he has mentioned the same ideas and theories from the video in the same order. So I've watched the video and compared it with the post, and oh yes, it's actually true. The percentage that the guy who made the 4chan post used this video as a framework is fairly high, and many people will run with that because it's way easier than not judging the case so quickly. There are still elements in the original 4chan post which deserve deeper analysis and less quick judgment, because 3 scientific breakthroughs were mentioned in the same order. He wrote a lot more than that. And I will remind you, I'm not trying to sustain the story in any way. And I fully understand that the mentioned video in combination with the nature that we can prove the identity of the person who posted it, will leave many people with a quick judgment. But we have at least to acknowledge that the general narrative he's describing could be very accurate. The current AI breakthroughs even reaching the public space, the weird drone incursions over the last months, and the statement that corporate and deep state groups wanted quick results to enhance their military apparatus seem very logical to me. Nevertheless, in this case, we will never know if this guy was actually the author of the 4chan post, and even if he was, if the material is genuine, and not to state it in Reddit terms a LARP, which clearly is the easier choice of believing in this case. Additionally, and I don't want to sound projecting, I bet many people doesn't even watch the video. If I read a man took 35 minutes to read 10 pages on a phone screen, I wasn't sure if the dude was joking. But TLDR is something else. The essence of what I'm trying to say is sometimes many people tend to be lazy and not doing the necessary work to create a judgment about a certain thing. Things like why didn't I came to the comment section first are very questionable. In my opinion, it's better to get the untainted source in at first and then reflect with others about the matter, which essentially worked in this case. But sometimes upvotes and awards are not representing definite truths. Another rather wild angle which came to mind is, if we got an advanced, self-sustaining rogue AI out there which is learning human behavior with the equivalent of 5,000 IQ points, these Reddit dynamics could easily be programmed and hooked via AI bots posting AI statements, manipulating us, real humans on the platform with ease. To be honest, I think it will look kinda like the screenshot from the top comments I showed once I started with this paragraph. I know that's unlikely and very schizophrenic, but it's included in a rather open mind. You can think a lot, but not to crystallize your take and run with every narrative immediately seems like a good path to walk on. So rest in peace to the guy. He seemed to was a dedicated man and died way too early under clearly weird circumstances. Maybe he was killed, maybe he killed himself and wanted to create attention for him being a real genuine whistleblower who knew that he effed up or willingly did so in the first place. There are countless people putting out their take on the matter, and there was even the Twitter X space with Sean Ryan and Sam Shoemate about the incident involving further questions, but not many answers. If we consider the power players in this game, it's fair to assume that any real truth had been eradicated at this point. We are only left with these bits from 4chan and Reddit, and a manifesto or email from the guy, which is hard to prove if it's from him in the first place. Anyway, and additionally, we have to say that he is stating two different things with his emails and the 4chan thing. In one piece, he blames China for the mystery drones, and in the other he claims it's the top secret Carpenter AI going rogue. So two complete different things, both more believable than NHI or aliens from another planet, for the most part. Anyway, I think we should wait and stay vigilant. 2025 is starting with a fast pace of events, and the drone situation isn't solved at all. So I will keep an eye on these things, and I also got big plans in terms of transforming my content for the year 2025, which will be a very special and impactful one. So stay blessed and try to keep the balance. So peace out, LIBRA.
Spencer Evans, Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas division. In terms of a question about the validity of what Livelsberger put out to the public, either in the two-page manifesto or additional documentation we're discovering, we're not speaking to the content. I can say, as Sheriff Corrin described and others, it runs the gamut. I mean, he's talking about feeling that he was, surveilled, guilt. You can tell there's, some anguish there, some frustration with the government. I mean, there's a whole host of things. So we haven't gotten into, what's legitimate, what's not. The only thing that, out of an abundance of caution, in as much as there's Department of Defense equities that speak to sources and methods or something else that would endanger folks overseas, that's not being released. But beyond that, we haven't vetted any of his writings to determine, what's legitimate and what was in his own head.
Including whatever happened in 2019?
Yeah, including, he alleges a variety of things, and we haven't gotten into the weeds on any of that.
That podcast email is him.
Yeah, so we have confirmed that the document that he sent to the podcast, we know that he was the one that sent that document. That's correct.